The alien warrior stood at the edge of the valley, her armor glinting under the twin suns of Varnus. The ground beneath her feet trembled from the sound of her soldiers assembling in perfect lines. Every being in the outpost kept their distance. Even her own kind, towering and battle-hardened, lowered their gazes when she passed. They whispered her name like a curse, Sarath, the blade of the Empire, the undefeated one. For years she had been the terror of entire star systems. Her victories were legend. Her cruelty was feared, or so everyone said. But no one really knew her, not beyond the scars on her armor or the cold precision in her eyes. Inside, Sarath was a hollow echo of what she had once been. She fought because it was all she had ever known, because her orders demanded it, because peace was something she had never been allowed to imagine. When word spread that humans, the fragile species from the blue world called Earth, had joined the Galactic Council, she barely reacted. To her, they were soft, untested, and far too emotional. But fate had its own ideas. A human ship crash-landed near her sector, a single survivor among the wreckage. The Empire demanded his capture. They called it a matter of security. But Sarath was chosen to lead the mission. Her orders were simple. Retrieve the human alive if possible. Destroy him if not. The storm clouds of Varnus gathered as her unit approached the crash site. The wind howled through the jagged rocks, carrying the scent of burnt metal and ozone. The human's vessel lay broken, its silver hull half buried in the dirt. Flames flickered weakly around the edges. "Spread out," Sarath commanded. Her voice was low but powerful, a tone that carried absolute obedience. Her soldiers moved with discipline, scanning the wreck with energy rifles drawn. The air shimmered with heat and tension. Then a sound. A faint cough from behind the wreckage. Sarath turned first, her instincts sharper than anyone else's. Her hand reached for her weapon, but she hesitated. For a moment, she simply listened. Another cough, weaker this time. She motioned for her troops to stay back and stepped forward alone. The air grew still as she rounded the corner and saw him, the human. He sat on the ground, leaning against a piece of broken metal. His uniform was torn, covered in dust and blood. His face was pale but calm. His eyes bright, defiant, alive. He didn't flinch when he saw her, though her towering armored frame cast a long shadow over him. Sarath expected fear, panic, pleading, but instead, the human just looked at her and steady and silent. "What are you waiting for?" he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "Go ahead. Take me." Her hand tightened around her weapon. The order was clear. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, yet there was something strange about this one. No trembling, no begging, just calm acceptance. "What is your name?" she asked, her tone clipped. "Elias," he said. "And you must be the one they fear." The words surprised her. Few dared speak to her so directly, fewer still with such calm. "You know who I am?" she asked. "Everyone does," Elias said with a faint smile. "But they don't really know you, do they?" That single line lingered in the air like a pulse. For the first time in years, Sarath didn't know how to respond. She could have ended his life right there. It would have been simple, quick, efficient, but something inside her, something long buried, stirred. "Get up," she ordered. Elias tried, but his leg buckled. Without thinking, Sarath reached out and caught him before he fell. The moment her armored hand touched his arm, she froze. His skin was warm, human warmth, alive, fragile. It was the first time she had ever touched something that wasn't metal, weapon, or enemy. Her soldiers watched in silence, confused by their commander's hesitation. One of them, a younger warrior named Tareen, stepped forward. "Commander," he said carefully, "should we terminate the target?" Sarath turned her head slightly, her voice colder than ice. "Stand down." The tone left no room for argument. They watched as she pulled the human closer, supporting his weight. Elias looked at her face, or what little could be seen through her visor. "You're helping me?" Sarath's jaw tightened. "You can't walk on your own. You'll slow the patrol. That's all." Elias almost smiled. "Sure." They reached the transport pod as thunder rolled across the valley. The soldiers kept their distance. No one spoke. Sarath sat across from Elias, her gaze fixed forward, though her mind was elsewhere. He studied her quietly. There was something in his eyes, curiosity, not fear. "You fight because they tell you to, don't you?" he asked softly. She didn't look at him. "I fight because it's what I was made for. And if you weren't made for it?" he pressed. If you had a choice? Her fingers twitched slightly. Choice is a human word. Maybe, Elias said. But maybe it's a word worth learning. For the rest of the journey, silence filled the pod. But it wasn't the usual silence of soldiers. It was different. Something unspoken passed between them, a tension that wasn't made of fear or anger. It was curiosity. When they reached the fortress, Sarath handed Elias over to the medics. She didn't need to, but she stayed in the corridor watching as they treated him. She told herself it was just to ensure the mission was complete. But she knew that wasn't true. Days passed. Reports came in. Her commanders praised her for capturing the human alive. But when they ordered his interrogation, something inside her resisted. She told herself it didn't matter. Yet when she heard his voice echo through the halls, calm even under pressure, she found herself walking toward the chamber. Through the glass wall, she saw him sitting calmly as the interrogators questioned him. He didn't break. Didn't reveal a single thing. When it was over, she entered the chamber. Elias looked up. You came to check if I'm still breathing? Sarath didn't answer right away. Then she asked, Why are you not afraid? Because fear doesn't change what's true, Elias said quietly. And I think you already know what's true. Her armor hummed softly as she leaned closer. And what is that? That you're not what they say you are. For a long time she stood there frozen. Something inside her, something she'd long believed dead, began to wake. Later that night the storm returned, roaring across the sky. Sarath stood outside looking up at the lightning. The wind howled through her armor. She should have felt powerful, but instead she felt something she couldn't name. When she turned, she saw him again, escorted by guards, being led back to his cell. He limped, still weak from his injuries, and before she could stop herself, Sarath took a step forward. Their eyes met through the storm, and in that brief, impossible moment, Elias smiled. A small human smile, not of triumph but of trust. Something broke inside her armor, not physically but deeper. Without realizing what she was doing, Sarath reached out, and he, without hesitation, reached back. His hand touched hers, metal against flesh. Warm against cold. The storm thundered above them as if the galaxy itself had stopped to watch. Every guard froze. Every soldier stared. The warrior everyone feared, Anaisa, the blade of the Empire, Sais, was standing still, her armored hand holding that of a fragile human. It lasted only a second, but it changed everything, because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. The human wasn't afraid of her, and for the first time in her life, neither was she. The next morning, the fortress was unusually quiet. The soldiers whispered in the corridors, uncertain how to speak about what they had seen. None dared mention it openly, but everyone knew. Their feared commander had touched the hand of a human. For some it was a moment of confusion, for others a spark of fear. Yet for Sarath it was something far more complicated. She stood in her quarters, staring at her reflection in the dark glass. Her armor was spotless, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. But her mind was not calm. The warmth of that brief contact still lingered on her palm, even through the armor. It made no sense. She had fought hundreds of battles, faced fire and blood without hesitation. Yet one human touch had shaken her more than any war ever had. The door chimed. "Enter," she said quietly. Tareen, her second in command, stepped inside. His armor was scratched, his voice uncertain. "Commander," he said carefully, "the Council has ordered another interrogation. They believe the human may hold data from the crash. They want him pressured." Sarath's eyes narrowed. "Who gave that order?" "The High Command," Tareen replied. "They said your presence is no longer required for this matter." That was enough to tell her everything. They didn't trust her anymore. Not after what they saw. The Empire had no patience for doubt nor compassion. She dismissed Tareen with a nod, but her heart was heavy. When the door closed, she sat down and removed her gauntlet. Her bare hand trembled slightly, the skin marked with faint red lines from the armor. She stared at it as if trying to find meaning in something that was never supposed to matter. For hours, she tried to ignore the thought of Elias. But when the alarm sounded in the lower levels, she was already moving. The detention wing smelled of metal and electricity. Guards hurried past her, muttering about resistance from the human prisoner. The Council's interrogator, A pale alien with cold eyes was already inside the chamber. Through the window she saw Elias seated again, calm, silent, but his face was pale with exhaustion. The interrogator stood beside him, speaking softly, but with threat in every word. Serath's chest tightened. She entered without asking permission. "Commander, you are not authorized," the interrogator began, but she cut him off with a single glance. "Leave." "This is a direct order from the High Command," he said sharply. Serath took a step closer, her voice quiet but deadly. "Leave now." The interrogator hesitated, then after a moment turned and left. The door sealed behind him. Elias looked up at her. "You came back," he said quietly. "You shouldn't speak," she replied, though her voice lacked its usual edge. He smiled faintly. "You don't take orders very well, do you?" Serath ignored the comment, but inside something stirred again, that strange warmth she couldn't name. She moved closer, studying the cuts on his wrists. The interrogation restraints had been rough. "They will not stop," she said finally. "They think you know something." "Something about the Council's secrets. And do you?" he asked. "I know they are afraid," she said softly. "Afraid of what they don't understand." "Afraid of your kind?" He studied her, his eyes steady. "And you? Are you afraid of us?" Serath's answer came slowly. "I was taught to be, but you are different than I imagined." Elias tilted his head. "Because I talk to you like a person?" "No," she said quietly. "Because you don't see me as a weapon." Silence filled the room again. The hum of the fortress echoed around them like a heartbeat. Finally, Serath deactivated his restraints. Elias rubbed his wrists, surprised. "Why are you helping me?" "You won't survive another session," she said. "And if you die, the Council will blame me." He gave a small, knowing smile. "That's not the real reason, is it?" Serath looked away but didn't answer. That night, rumors spread even faster. Some claimed Serath had betrayed the Empire. Others whispered that she had fallen under human influence. But no one dared confront her. She was still the Blade, after all, and even doubt could not dull her reputation overnight. Still, the pressure grew. A message arrived from the capital, ordering Serath to transfer the human to the high-security facility at Karthos. It was a quiet way of saying he would never return. Serath read the message twice, her jaw tightening. Then she deleted it. When the storm came again, fierce red lightning flashing over the valley, she made her choice. Under the cover of darkness, she entered the detention wing alone. The guards saluted her, unaware of her plan. She walked straight to Elias's cell and opened the door. He was sitting on the floor, half asleep, but his eyes opened when he saw her. "Let me guess," he murmured. "You got orders to finish me off." "Get up," she said. "We're leaving." His expression changed instantly. "Leaving?" She threw him a cloak and motioned to follow. Quietly, the corridors were empty. The storm outside masked the sound of their steps. They moved through the hangar bay where a small scout ship waited. Serath's pulse raced, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was doing. If she was caught, it would mean exile. Or worse. As they reached the ramp, Elias stopped. "You're risking everything," he said. She didn't turn to look at him. "Then move quickly, before I change my mind." Inside the cockpit, she entered the launch code manually. The engines hummed to life. Lightning streaked across the glass as the ship rose. Alarms sounded behind them. The fortress had detected the escape. "Hold on," Serath warned, and pushed the throttle. The ship shot upward through the storm. Energy bolts followed, streaks of light tearing through the clouds. Serath's hands moved with precision, dodging every blast. The sky above Varnus was alive with fire, but she didn't slow down. Finally, the blackness of space swallowed them. The fortress was gone. The alarms faded. Silence returned. Elias exhaled slowly. "We made it," Serath didn't reply. Her eyes were fixed on the stars ahead. For now. He leaned back, studying her from the co-pilot seat. "You didn't have to do this." "I know." "Then why did you?" Her fingers tightened around the controls. "Because something in me changed when I met you." Elias turned his head slightly, waiting. "I have fought all my life," she said. Every victory felt the same. Every order was followed without question. But you... She paused, searching for the right words. "You didn't see a monster when you looked at me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's because you aren't one." Serath looked at him. Truly looked. the human face marked by exhaustion and courage. "You believe that?" she said quietly. "I do," Elias replied. "And maybe one day you will too." The stars reflected in her eyes like silver fire. She didn't know what the future held: exile, pursuit, or death. But for the first time, she wasn't running from fear. Hours passed as the ship drifted into the quiet zone between worlds. Sarath set the course toward a neutral colony beyond Council reach. Elias fell asleep beside her, his head leaning against the window. She watched him for a long time, this fragile being who had defied her empire without a weapon. There was something about humans she hadn't understood before. They were weak in body perhaps, but not in will. Their strength came from something invisible, something she had never known. When dawn light from the nearest star touched the cockpit, Sarath removed her helmet. For the first time, she let the air touch her skin. The cold metal of her armor no longer felt like safety. It felt like a cage. Elias stirred awake. He turned to see her face clearly for the first time, the sharp lines, the silver eyes, the faint scar tracing her cheek. She looked different without the helmet, not terrifying, but almost human herself. "You're beautiful," he said softly. Sarath froze, startled. No one had ever said that word to her. Not once in her entire life. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The stars glimmered around them, endless and silent. And in that fragile moment, something inside her heart, something buried under years of battle, began to heal. The ship drifted through the quiet of uncharted space. Outside the viewport, stars stretched in endless lines as if time itself had slowed. Sarath piloted with precision, yet her mind wandered. Elias slept lightly beside her, his chest rising and falling with steady rhythm. She found herself studying him in silence, noticing details she had never thought to observe. The way his hair fell across his forehead, the faint crease in his brow, the way his hands rested loosely in his lap. It was a small, fragile moment of peace, one she never expected to have. Sarath had known fear, battle, and victory. She had lived among the greatest warriors of her empire, yet she had never encountered something like this. A quiet courage that did not demand weapons or dominance. It made her uneasy, yet drawn in a way she could not explain. Hours passed, and Elias stirred awake. His eyes opened slowly, meeting hers across the cockpit. He offered a small smile, the kind that made her chest tighten for reasons she did not yet understand. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured. "The stars, they make me feel small." "They have that effect on everyone," Sarath replied, her voice low, steady. She did not mention the truth, that she felt small too in a different way. Small yet alive in a way she hadn't been for decades. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he said. "Even other warriors I've seen. They have armor, yes, but it's like a shield around their hearts. You're real, even with the armor." Sarath's fingers tightened on the controls. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her commanders. Not her peers. Not even the soldiers who followed her into battle. Elias's words were gentle, but they carried weight. They cut through the walls she had built around herself. "You're far from safe here," she said quietly. "The Empire will not forgive what I've done. They will send others, hunters, soldiers. Perhaps worse. You need to be ready." Elias's gaze met hers, unwavering. "I trust you," he said simply. "I have to. You're the only one who's treated me like I matter." The warmth in her chest, the strange unfamiliar feeling that had begun when their hands first touched, grew stronger. She did not know what it meant, only that it made her want to protect him. Not because she was ordered to, but because she chose to. Hours later, they reached a small, neutral colony known only to a few smugglers and traders, a place where the Empire's reach was limited. The colony floated at the edge of a gas giant's rings, a cluster of metallic structures orbiting slowly. Sarath maneuvered the ship through the gaps with expert precision. As they docked, the engines powered down and silence returned. Sarath let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Elias looked around, taking in the foreign colony. "It's strange," he said softly, awe in his voice. "It is neutral territory," she replied. "No Empire banners, no council authority. Just rules that people live by, not imposed by soldiers or empires." They disembarked quietly, moving through narrow walkways between the orbiting modules. Traders shouted their offers. Robots scuttled along service tunnels, and humans and aliens alike hurried past. It was a chaotic harmony that contrasted sharply with the rigid order of the Empire. Sarath guided Elias to a small, modest living module offered by a friendly trader she knew from past missions. "Stay here," she said. "Do not leave until I return. I will secure supplies and information. If anyone finds us, you must be ready to move." Elias nodded. "And if you don't return?" Her eyes met his for a long moment. She did not answer, because she did not want to think about that possibility. Instead, she reached out and clasped his hand briefly. "Trust me," she said softly. Once outside, Sarath navigated the colony with ease, drawing supplies and discreetly checking communications channels. The Empire was already searching for the human, and for her. Every message she intercepted confirmed it. She would not have much time before hunters arrived. Hours later, back at the module, Elias prepared for departure. "I've never been this far from Earth," he admitted, nervous but determined. "I never thought I'd leave my home planet, much less with someone like you." Sarath studied him silently, unsure how to respond. Someone like her? The thought was strange and uncomfortable, yet not unpleasant. She had never considered that a human could see her as more than a weapon. "You're alive because of choices," she said finally. "You will survive because of courage. But this is not a world for peace." "Not yet," Elias nodded. "Then I'll follow. You've already risked everything for me. I'll trust you to keep doing so." They prepared the small transport ship for departure, taking extra precautions to avoid sensors and patrols. Sarath piloted expertly, but she could feel Elias's nervous energy beside her. It was unlike anything she had experienced, a blend of tension and wonder, fragile and human. During the long journey to safety, conversation became easier. Elias asked questions about her life, her battles, and her experiences. Sarath responded cautiously, sharing only fragments of her past. She spoke of planets conquered, victories won, and of times she had felt alone, though she never admitted the full depth of isolation that her role demanded. "You fight for others, not yourself," he said quietly. "Even when you don't show it, I can feel it. You carry the weight of all who follow you." She paused, unsure whether to be offended or moved. "And you," she asked, "why are you so calm in the face of everything? You've been captured, hurt, and yet you speak as if nothing can break you." "I've learned," he said. "Humans survive by trusting what they can and by letting go of what they cannot control. You've given me something I never had, a choice, and for that I am not afraid." Sarath considered his words. Trust, choice. These were concepts she had never experienced. Her life had been defined by orders, missions, and discipline. Nothing had ever been hers to decide, until Elias. Days passed as they traveled through hidden corridors of space, avoiding patrols and sensors. The bond between them grew quietly, unspoken yet strong. They shared small victories, a hidden cache of supplies, an avoided patrol, a rare moment of laughter in the silence of their journey. And slowly, Sarath began to notice changes within herself. She no longer felt the constant edge of battle. Her decisions were no longer dictated solely by fear of failure or consequence. Instead, she acted to protect Elias, to keep him alive. And in doing so, she discovered a sense of purpose she had never known outside of war. One evening, they stopped at a quiet asteroid settlement to rest. The sky was black, dotted with distant stars. Sarath stood outside the small docking bay, gazing at the endless space. Elias joined her silently. "You ever wonder what life would be like if you weren't the Blade?" he asked softly. Sarath did not respond immediately. She had never allowed herself to consider it. War, duty, fear, they had always defined her. But now, standing next to a human who had no idea of the weight she carried, she imagined it. A life without constant battles. A life where she could choose her actions. A life where connection and trust mattered more than power. "I think about it," she said finally, "more than I ever allowed myself to admit." He smiled gently. "Then maybe there is hope for you yet." She turned to him, and for the first time she did not hide behind her armor. The visor was gone, the steel replaced by her own unshielded gaze. Their eyes met, and in that moment neither war nor empire existed. Only the fragile trust between a human and an alien warrior who had never truly known companionship. Elias reached out, and she allowed him to take her hand again. No orders, no missions, no fear, only the simple human connection that neither of them had anticipated. It was a quiet revolution in itself, a choice they made together amidst chaos, and as they stood on that asteroid hand in hand, the galaxy stretched endlessly before them. The Empire would come for them, that much was certain. But for the first time, Sarath knew that she was not defined by fear or expectation. She was defined by the choices she made, and in choosing to protect a human, she had found the beginning of something new, something she had never believed possible. The journey through space stretched on, quiet and endless. Sarath and Elias had learned to move as one, each instinctively understanding the other. The long hours together had created a rhythm. Small conversations, shared glances, moments of laughter, and the steady presence of trust. The galaxy around them remained vast and unknowable, but inside their small ship, a fragile sense of home had begun to form. Sarath piloted with precise control, her hands moving effortlessly across the console. Elias watched the stars slide past the viewport, fascinated by their patterns. "Every star seems so far away," he said softly, "and yet we can pass through this space. It's strange, beautiful." "It is," Sarath agreed, "but beauty is often accompanied by danger." He looked at her, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Maybe that is why it is beautiful, because it can be lost, because it matters more when it is fragile." She studied him quietly. Humans were strange creatures. Fragile, yes, yet filled with courage, curiosity, and an ability to inspire hope. Elias had survived more than she could have imagined, not by weapons or strength, but by his unshakable determination to live and to trust. And in trusting her, he had taught her something she had never learned, that power alone was not everything, that strength could be measured in kindness, courage, and choice. The ship's sensors beeped faintly, drawing her attention. A nearby planet lay ahead, neutral, far from Imperial scrutiny. It was uncharted in most records, a haven, perhaps, where they could rest, repair the ship, and plan their next move. Sarath adjusted the trajectory. "We will land there," she said. "We must be careful. Even neutral space can hide danger." Elias nodded. "I trust you to keep us safe." The word struck her more deeply than she expected. Trust. It was something she had never received, never allowed herself to accept. Yet here it was, freely given by someone who had every reason to fear her, and in that trust she felt a connection she had never known, a warmth that rivaled the suns themselves. As the ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, the surface came into view. Rolling plains, forests that stretched to the horizon, and rivers that shimmered like silver ribbons under the light of a pale sun. It was a world untouched by war, by empire, by orders, a place that existed outside the reach of fear. They landed gently on a flat clearing near a river. Sarath shut down the engines, and for a long moment they simply breathed in the quiet. Elias stepped outside first, feeling the alien soil beneath his feet, the gentle breeze against his face. "It's peaceful," he said. Sarath followed, her armor replaced by lighter protective clothing for exploration. She took a cautious step forward, letting the wind brush against her exposed skin. For the first time in years, she felt more than the constant tension of battle. She felt alive. Elias turned to her. "This place, it could be home for a while." "It could be," she said carefully. She glanced around, scanning the horizon for signs of danger, though her heart longed to believe it safe. They explored the nearby riverbank, gathering fresh water and foraging small fruits from the trees. Elias laughed softly as he stumbled on a root, and Sarath caught him before he fell. The touch was light, casual, yet it carried the same quiet warmth as before. She realized how much she had come to rely on his presence, on his calm and steady courage. As night fell, they built a small camp. The fire cast soft light across their faces. Elias tended the flames while Sarath kept watch, eyes scanning the stars, always alert. But the tension was different now. It was not fear of battle, but cautious vigilance. "You've changed," Elias said quietly, breaking the silence. "You're softer, but not weak. Stronger in a different way." Sarath studied him. "And you've changed me," she admitted. "I have always known how to fight, but I have never known how to protect something because I choose to, not because I am ordered to." "Not until you," he smiled. "Then we've changed each other. That's something worth keeping." They shared a quiet meal, speaking little but feeling a deep sense of understanding between them. As the fire crackled, Elias looked up at the stars. "Do you ever wonder if people are meant to meet? Even across worlds?" "All the time," Sarath admitted. "And sometimes the universe surprises us." Days turned into nights and the small world became a sanctuary. They repaired the ship using resources from the planet and tools they carried, working side by side. Their hands occasionally brushed, sometimes deliberately, sometimes by accident, each contact carrying warmth and unspoken acknowledgement of trust and connection. Sareth taught Elias to handle basic navigational controls, and in turn he taught her to see the galaxy from a different perspective, not as a series of battles and missions, but as a place filled with life, wonder, and possibility. He shared stories of Earth, of humanity's fragile yet resilient nature, of simple joys and the bonds people formed despite fear or difference. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the horizon, Elias turned to her. "Do you ever think about staying? Not running, not hiding?" Sareth considered him. "I have thought about it," she said slowly. "But my past, it will follow me. The Empire will not let go. They will send others. And yet," her gaze softened, focusing on him, "yet I want to stay. I want to see what this could be." He reached out, taking her hand once more. "Then let us see. Together." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of promise, choice, and trust. Sareth felt a sense of peace that she had never known. For the first time, she realized that connection was not weakness, that protecting someone because you care could be more powerful than any weapon. In the days that followed, they explored the planet, mapping safe zones and hidden resources. They learned to communicate silently with gestures, developed routines that balanced survival with comfort, and allowed themselves moments of laughter and light-heartedness. Sareth found herself smiling more, feeling lighter, freer. Elias was not just a companion. He was a mirror reflecting a side of herself she had long suppressed, the side that could hope, trust, and care. Then one morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, Elias spoke softly. "Do you think the Empire will ever stop searching?" Sareth's jaw tightened. "No, they will not. But we are not powerless. We are careful, we are prepared, and we have time." She paused, looking at him with intensity. "And no matter what comes, I will protect you." His hand found hers again. "And I will trust you. Always." The simplicity of the statement made her chest tighten. Trust, protection, choice. Words she had never allowed herself to feel with anyone. Yet with Elias they had meaning, substance, life. In the quiet of that alien world, the warrior who had once inspired fear became a guardian, and the human who had once seemed fragile became her anchor. Together they discovered that courage was not always about fighting enemies or conquering worlds. Sometimes it was about choosing to protect, to trust, and to care. And as they stood together, hand in hand, the galaxy stretched endlessly before them. Stars blinked in silent witness, a universe of infinite possibilities. Sareth felt something she had never known. Hope. Not as a distant, fragile idea, but as a living, breathing truth. No matter what came next, pursuit, danger, the Empire's wrath, they had this moment. They had each other, and that, she realized, was more powerful than any blade, any army, or any command. Elias smiled up at her. "We made it," he said softly, not in triumph, but in quiet acknowledgement of survival, trust, and connection. Sareth nodded, her gaze sweeping the horizon. "Yes, for now. And together, we will face whatever comes next." The alien warrior who had once inspired fear and the human who had dared to reach out found peace in a galaxy that had never promised it. And in that handhold, that small, simple connection, they discovered the greatest strength of all, the power to choose, to trust, and to hope.